Morning.
Hi, good morning all. How are we doing today?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. We've made it. This is our last and final class. Are we all excited?
Yay.
Yay, boy.
Yay.
That's a dry yay. I'll be beat up and overwhelmed with information.
I'm beat up and overwhelmed.
We're
Very
scared.
much.
What you're scared of? Stop it.
I'm not scared. I'm just
so nervous.
class.
Sorry. Okay, one at a time.
I'm
Alicia, go ahead.
I delayed it.
so
Sorry.
nervous. Hold on, Alicia or Felicia?
Alicia. And then we'll go with Felicia right after.
Okay. I said I'm nervous because I think I can't remember who that was I was talking to earlier this week. But it just like I was so overwhelmed. And I tried to study early, right? I was like writing on my essays and what I wanted to say and my points and stuff like that. And it's just like intimidating for me because I have zero compliance knowledge. At least everybody kind of work in the field or have some sort of exposure to it. So even if they don't study rigorously, they could still like fall back on their work knowledge.
Okay.
To at least fluff it up.
Right, but like I said, you've been throughout
the... No, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Sheena, go ahead.
I was not in compliance when I was in the introduction. So I didn't know anything. So I was like the least amount in the class. Other persons had knowledge. So it was a bit overwhelming. But once you study, see, that's the thing. You can't mind when people stay in class and then you feel like, oh, they know everything and I don't know anything. Once you study for yourself, that's the key to it. So don't worry about that. Don't worry about the knowledge of compliance.
Correct. And you seem to be, through the entire course, very engaged, speaking knowledgeably, asking the right questions, reading the right articles and sharing. So you are at the top of my list, Alicia, so I'm not even concerned about you. I think you will do very well. As I said, both the homework questions and the classwork were all questions from past papers. And so if you were able to, answer those and, understand what the questions were asking, you will be fine. And you're on the right track. The key is to practice. Try and write, of course, there's going to be a question on the FATF. We had 4 chapters on risk. Of course, there's going to be a question on risk. Of course, there's one on sanctions, and you follow the review. You have your 10 points, and get rid of the nerves. I'm confident that you're going to be successful. Okay, so you had enough examples to decipher what's going to be on the exam. You know that there are only 10 chapters, and so the key is once you prepare, you should be fine. Okay, so hopefully you could control those nerves. Yeah. Okay, Felicia, go ahead.
Recording in progress. Sorry, let me move away from that. I told Alicia this week, I think she's scaring herself because I told her exactly what we have is what's going to come. So I think she's going to be okay. But I honestly just looking forward to today's class to get everyone's input on the final questions so that I can add them to my notes to go from there. And I wanted to know if we could touch on risk one more time today, please.
Okay, sure. So I think Candice is who has the risk questions, and so I'll do a little overview after she gives her contribution. So that's fine.
That's me. I have the risk question. Alicia.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Candice must have heard because she had emailed me about it. So okay, so let's see what Alicia contributes, and then I'll add to it, as required. Okay, so no worries. I'm pretty confident this was a pretty intellectual class, so I have no concern about you ladies at all. And I do hope that you would have been able to, like I said, retain the information. And the key is to just organize yourself and go into the exam prepared. Most of you are halfway there. You're going in with a full 30%, so that's commendable already. And so you don't have to overwhelm yourself with trying to get, of course you want the best grade possible, but most of you are sitting comfortably in the exam right now. What was I gonna say? In terms of, is there anybody who needs to give their 5%? Is there anybody that does not have their 5% at this point? No? Okay, so see, most of you are there. And those points really help, so you don't have to feel like, this is not achievable. I just want to confirm again, and I know we said this last week, your exam is scheduled for October the 9th. Is that the date that you have?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so could you please just touch bases with the institute to confirm your attendance? I know one or two persons said that they had an issue and we got some emails, but could you just call in and try to speak to Ms. Sturrup or Ms. Dean and just confirm that you would be there on the 9th at 9 a.m. and she would want to just properly arrange to make sure that there's no more than, I guess, 3 per classroom. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, and remember now, only your keys. Please don't bring any books, any bags, any cell phones. The exam is going to be recorded. There's no extra paper or it's not open book. Most of you should know the rules of the institute in regards of examinations. We did have somebody who had a sheet and they said they thought you could bring a cheat sheet. We had another person who went into their jacket and pulled out the cell phone. We had another person whose cell phone continuously was on vibrate, so it kept vibrating against the desk. So please avoid all these issues. If you're caught cheating, you have to go to counseling before you're let back into any class at the institute. If your employer has paid your school fees, they are going to be contacted. And then you have to pay $150 to retake the exam. So please, let's just avoid all of that. Sometimes people go in and they freeze, and there are other opportunities to come back and resit the exam. And if at first you don't succeed, try again. And we have persons, 90% of the persons that take it the first time, they pass. And then we have a small percentage, about 10% have to do a retake and they pass. We don't have persons to the third and fourth time not being able to pass the class. Okay, so that's not the norm. Okay, let me just look in the chat. Okay, so everybody good and everybody comfortable with the information thus far?
Can we go over some multiple choice questions, please, Ms. Buller?
Sure, not a problem. Okay, let's get to chapter 10. Did anybody read chapter 10? Anybody has an overview of chapter 10?
I started to.
Okay, so just give us an overview. In 2019, the ICA program changed the subjects, and so prior it used to be 9 months of AML and then 9 months of just compliance. And so, of course, the FATF, 40 recommendations have been out from revised since 2012, and countries have been working to, implement all these recommendations into law. Of course, in the 2018, the Bahamas updated all their laws to become compliant. At that same time, around the world, the FATF was working on enforcement. And so the ICA, we switched over to the risk-based approach. And so the course was, I guess, developed from just AML and compliance to governance, risk, and compliance. Okay, so their focus now is on governance, leadership. Of course, this chapter talks about, the tune from the top. And of course, we always say, the fish rots from the top. If the head is rotten, the tail is definitely going to be rotten, okay? And that affects the entire culture.
But you going in and out.
You can hear me? Okay, that affects the entire culture of the company, okay? So go ahead, Felicia. Give us your input.
You breaking up? I don't know if it's only me.
I could hear her. Maybe it's you.
Yeah. Anybody else having an issue?
I can hear you clear.
I can have mine.
Okay. Okay, so Felicia, you wanted to give us an overview?
No, I didn't want to. You asked me to, but I could.
Okay. Okay. But let us know what you from chapter 10, what did you gather?
Pretty much just was talking about how the ML, well, the company itself, they need to have these AML programs in place, and it's talking about leadership. And even though I think I read something there about the board as well, but they were talking about the MLR as well. They touched on the MLR, the compliance systems. Basically, yeah, I just scanned through it. I didn't read everything.
Okay. And so for the most part, persons in organizations feel that the MLRO or the compliance department is responsible for compliance and the anti-money laundering framework. But in actuality, we learned in intro that the board is ultimately responsible, and that's a very common multiple choice question, because everybody, that's like an 85% fail rate for that question, because everybody automatically selects compliance or the MLRO. So just to reiterate, the board is ultimately responsible for compliance and risk and the framework that is put in place into the company. And of course, we know, the board only comes in about 4 times a year. Every quarter, they have a board meeting. So ultimately, they delegate their authority to senior management throughout the organization. So senior management will do the day-to-day work, and then they, submit reports to the board for their approval. Okay, and the board would question. So that's essentially how it works. But from the regulatory standpoint, or who is responsible, you can share responsibility. You can't share you are accountable. The board is still accountable. Okay, and so that's a big thing in ICA, where they encourage you to review persons' job descriptions, ensure that they understand exactly what their responsibilities are, and to know that if something should happen, then they are ultimately responsible. And this is important because a lot of companies are outsourcing now. So you would see or hear that our back office is outsourced. The customer is on our books, but we go to, say, Royal Bank to send our wires. Or if a customer wants to deposit into the bank, they have to go down to Fidelity and deposit at our account at Fidelity. So a lot of functions are outsourced. Compliance is now being heavily outsourced as well. So in some companies, there's not a body sitting there each day from 9 to 5, but they have a consulting group, perhaps checking their hits, approving their accounts for onboarding, and any other, duties assigned to the compliance department. So the book goes on to talk about the governance and leadership within the company. You should take into any outsourcing arrangements. You want to ensure that those companies that you do indeed outsource to are reputable companies. There are contracts that have to be signed. The central bank has a policy on the minimum requirements for outsourcing, material functions. And material functions would be like the HR, IT, like I said, the back office, anybody who's taking deposits or sending wires on your behalf. And then it talks about the whistleblowing procedures. Normally, the whistleblowing procedures lie with the compliance department. There should be a policy, and I encourage everybody, just like we now should be 100% familiar with our anti-money laundering policy. That should be our Bible. That should be, referred to for day-to-day information. You should also know the whistleblowing policy. We all know about Eric Snowden and what happened with him in terms of the US government, and he had to be, he is now in Russia in safekeeping and protection from.
I don't know who that is.
You don't know who Eric Snowden is?
No, ma'am, I don't.
Okay, so he I think he's an ex-CIA agent for the US government, and he blew the whistle on some unscrupulous things that were happening. And
He's the
so,
NSA leaker or something, they call him like that?
sorry, go ahead, Miss Lee, I didn't hear you.
Was the NSA leaker? He leaked information on
Yeah,
the NSA?
yeah, so he leaked that information, and so he had to go into hide. So that's on a large scale. But my experience was I was at a company where the CEO, not the CEO, but the chairman, who was a 51% shareholder, continually borrowed money from the company and said that we should hold his shares. And so we tried to explain to him that that's a conflict and he was not allowed to do that. So, of course, it started off with 250,000 and we declined it. He still took it anyway. Then it moved up to $1 million, and then he went all the way up to 4 million. So of course, we had to blow the whistle on him, and we reported him to the central bank, and said that he is getting out of control. We don't know this, because essentially this is not his money, this is the client's money. And he, you could have taken your shares down to Commonwealth Bank and gotten a loan, and Commonwealth Bank would hold your shares, but you cannot borrow money within the same company, because if the company defaults, then your shares are not valuable. So, he just didn't get the gist of that, and we reported him to the central bank. He told the central bank that, because the central bank uses moral suasion, they call you in and they say, Miss Bullard, we saw this is what you did. This is against the law, against section this of the act. Please resign and leave this company. However, and we refer to that as moral suasion. They don't want the media involved. They're trying to protect their company from reputational risk. However, there are some, CEOs and chairmen who say, oh, y'all can't tell me what to do. And so that's exactly what he said. This is my company. Y'all can't tell me to leave. And so they called the police, and he was arrested, and the matter went all the way to the Supreme Court. So of course the Supreme Court upheld the central bank's decision, and they removed him, they revoked his residency, they repossessed his house, and he ended up losing everything and being banned from the country entirely. And so we have one or two, other persons who felt that, the regulators weren't authorized to remove them. And so, while central bank uses moral suasion, they have gone down to companies and put a lock on the door and, let all the staff go and what have you. And I think that happened with Swiss America, and there was another company back in the day with some, I can't, where's the Bahamas, where's Saki's from? One of those Eastern countries. But he was very popular because he treated the staff very well, and the staff was behind him 100%. However, he was removed from the country. That was a few years ago. Anybody familiar with that situation? No? Okay. So that's the central bank using moral suasion. If you go on the Securities Commission sites, they send you fines, they send you notices, they send you warnings, and they put out, a notice, do not do business with this person. And so you can go on the site and see the various warnings and notices. And so they don't use that moral suasion. They call the police for you right away, and they shut you down right away. So their I guess strategies is a bit different when dealing with these various broker dealers and what have you that are regulated by them. Okay, so just so you understand exactly what the whistleblowing policy is, and it does not necessarily have to be a CEO or a chairman. It could be somebody right in your department. Like for years, my teller of the year, and a teller I used to drop home, and she supported me 100%, always worked late, always did everything that I asked. She was the one who was stealing from the blind and the disabled persons. And, we had a few persons that could not speak English. And so, and we had a few that signed X. And so they, if they came into the bank and somebody had filled out their withdrawal slip for them, if they put $300, she would cross it out and put 400 or 500. She would take the difference. And so one guy, he just could not speak English, and he kept saying, you know, he tried to explain to us that every withdrawal was, you know, less money than he got. When he reconciled the numbers, it didn't make no sense. But again, he, you know, he finally brought somebody to interpret this to us. And when we pulled the slips, we could see where every single withdrawal was crossed out and increased. So, you know, that was an eye opener for us. But again, we couldn't prove that he did not get this money, because essentially when you sign the withdrawal slip, you sign for what's on it. It says 500, you got 500, the breakdown is there. And so I started a little investigation, and then I saw where the blind man had 70,000 on his account, and she had just withdraw. Every time he came in, she duplicated his withdrawal. And like I said, that was my teller of the year. She supported me 100%. We had a very good relationship. She wanted me to be godmother to her son. I picked up and dropped her every day, and she was the one who was keeping. So that really hurt my heart. But what could I do? You know, and I've had many of those types of instances throughout my career, where it's the person that hangs out with you, the person that goes to lunch with you every day, and if they are unscrupulous, then what do you do? Do you blow the whistle? Whistling it? Do you blow the whistle? Your best friend.
Sorry, repeat the question, please.
Yeah, I mean, I just want y'all to understand. I say, are we in a position where we will blow that whistle if we find that one of our colleagues, even if they are close to us, are we able to speak up and report them and say, listen, this money is missing, or these steps are missed, so something isn't determined, or these, you know, they hyphenate names in the system so that these people their accounts could remain open.
Ms. Ballard, I ain't going to jail for nobody.
For nobody, okay.
Foxtail ain't in the place for me. I'm so sorry, I can't.
You wouldn't make it, eh? You wouldn't
I would not make it, no ma'am.
Okay, good. So that's the whistleblowing procedures, and it should identify who is the person you should report to, or who can you in confidence go and speak to without any repercussions. And so it should be the compliance officer. However, suppose it's a compliance person that you need to report them, what do you do? So the regulator is then there available if there's nobody in the organization that you could speak to in confidence, and you feel like everybody in cahoots, then you go and speak to the regulator or the FIU. Okay. So another thing that the book talks about is the value of ethics and integrity must come before any compliance framework. And right now we know that in the corporate world today, it's very vicious. There are a lot of unethical persons. All the systems are blocked up. It seems as if what's happening is the person who has the least knowledge is in charge, and then you know, they frustrate all the persons with the knowledge out of the system. Because I experienced that for a very long time in the company where I worked, whereas, you know, when promotion time came, and especially with people managers, it was always somebody who did not know the work and did not know how to deal with people. Another problem that I've seen, sorry?
How do you deal with that? I don't understand how people don't know what they're doing, making it up the ladder. I have a
It
problem.
still happens.
Yeah.
I have a problem with that.
Yeah, Felicia, I and this is just my opinion, I think it's job security for the person on top. Because if you hire that person who is next in line, they can never replace you. And so essentially you keep your job till you retire. And so they look around and they hire people who, if I put Ms. Bullet in charge of Whistleblowing and DR, they go resign, because Ms. Bullet ain't get no sense and she ain't know how to treat people. So to me, that person on top is trying to protect themselves. And so that's a systemic problem across many institutions, where that one idiot is in charge and just destroys everybody's day. Okay, and that is unethical. And so we must keep in training. We must keep current. We must not find a way to to last in the industry by manipulation and unethical practices. Okay, but people, they are afraid. The companies are always looking for cheap labor or somebody who's more innovative or somebody younger. And so you find that when you get to a certain point in your career, these people don't want to leave after 30 years. They still have mortgages, they still have bills to pay, so they become desperate. And so they become very unethical and they make everybody else's life hell. So we are trying to train persons to if enough of us have the same mindset and we are trained and we know that we have to keep act with integrity, then we can switch some of these things that have been systemic for many years. And these are like elephants in the rooms. Nobody talks about it. And when you talk about it, they say that you are crazy or it doesn't really exist, but it exists. Okay, it's truly happening. And so we want to work through culture and ensuring that the company does not have a culture of hiring that one person who's going to destroy everybody else. Okay, we have a long way to go, but let's start to have the conversation. Or Miss Bullet been here for 25 years. Lord, before she retire, we have to give her a position. Why is she qualified for it? Why? Okay, if she doesn't have the technical skills, if she doesn't have the soft skills to deal with people, if she don't have the interpersonal skills, you cannot become the manager no matter how long you've been there. And we should not just be giving you a position because I 30 years, right? And that's what happening.
I think so, because sometimes I see a lot of managers, they have they don't know how to deal with, they're not well-rounded. Yeah, you might be able to sell a product, but you don't know how to manage staff. You don't know how to do the work that everybody else done. So that's where a lot of delegating comes in. You show no concern for your staff. So it's just a lot of mixed emotions in that area that I don't agree with, that still goes on to this day.
Okay, so heavily in ICA, the training is around ethics, the way you treat people, having the correct interpersonal skills, and ensuring that you are properly trained. And so you don't become, as a manager, like destroying the entire department because you are uneducated and you have your degree from 1999 and none of those things that you learned in 1999 are even current or applicable anymore. You're used to do it the manual way. So go out there and get some training, go out there and upgrade yourself, and don't be thinking that my way is the right way because this is the way I was taught. Okay, so there are various issues surrounding, like I said, always act ethical, always act with integrity, keep current so you can keep abreast of the new trends, what's happening in organization. And we should not have so many people hating their job, hating to come to work, a tense environment where the culture is very poor and people don't feel valued. Okay, that's one of the biggest problems that I think the world has, but I'm focusing on the Bahamas. We need to start to have these conversations of how people are treated, quality care, the human factor at work. Okay, so hopefully these things are put on our goals for the year, and people are able to speak up and not ridiculed when they bring these things to light. Okay. Again, every time we audit, we have an audit sheet, and the first question is the tone from the top, and we sit with senior management and we ask them various questions. And we do talk about ethics and we talk about culture and we document their response. And from their responses, we decide, is this a environment with a good culture? Are they aware of AML policies and procedures? Are they implementing them? Do they support them? You know, what are their objectives? Are they disseminating information to the company? You know, is the information getting to the right persons? And then what are the criteria when they select these managers? And you know, a lot of companies have brought on employee opinion surveys, and you know, I have been a people manager for a very long time, and you know, some people like you and some people just don't like you at all. And so I, you know, was lucky to, I had some people who really, really supported me 100%. I had some people who hated my guts. So I was fortunate to have, you know, I had 10 persons reporting into me, and 8 of them loved me and 2 of them hated my guts. So when the employee opinions survey came around, luckily it was a majority, because it was the other way around. I've been a people's manager for a very long time. And then, you know, like I said, we don't live in perfect. Everybody won't like you, but if some people should have a respect for your work, like they should have a respect for the decision. I really don't care for Miss Bullet. She really talks too much and she makes me sick, but she is fair. She's knowledgeable and she does not take advantage. You know, that's the way you should be. You know, your mindset should be. Because over the course of my career, I had 5 managers in total, and 3 hated my guts. Hated my guts and say, you know, I'll never make it anywhere. They don't understand how you became the management and what have you. And so it was not a good experience. I learned a lot though, because I know I had to do my best, you know, to move up the ladder. But I had 2 that really cared for me, and we have good friendships, and they supported me throughout my entire career. And when, you know, things happen that shouldn't have, I was able to call them and say, listen, please intervene on my behalf. Luckily, they were at, you know, top tier positions in the organizations, and they were able to assist. But that's how your career is going to be. It's not, you're not going to live in perfect. People will support you and then people won't support you. But when you're not getting that support, that's when you must show your true ethics, your true integrity. And trust me, when wealth management, where I was closed down, and you know, they always have a little party and what have you, my speech, you know, they say, oh, speech, you know, and the person in IT couldn't stand my guts, and somebody else hated me, and I said, I thank you, you know, for the way you pushed me, because first of all, I have a stronger relationship with God, because just knowing that I had to see you all on Monday morning, I could not miss church any Sunday. So every Sunday I was in church on my knees praying just to make it through the week. And then I know how my work was going to be scrutinized. So I double checked it. I went to training. I you know, and that made me successful. So those people who become a thorn in your flesh, they bring out the best in you sometimes. So, you know, look at it that way. Go ahead, Felicia.
I have 2 points to make on that. Once we just were talking about this the other day, because a lady who I know, she found out that I was doing this course, and she just was talking about different points, just, you know, throwing things at me just to open my mind. And she spoke on the same management topic. And she was saying years ago when she was at an organization, she was managing a team, and her boss would want to come to her team and fuss them, and she'd tell the boss, no, you don't do that. You know, if you have something to say to them, you come to me. And the boss was like, you know, you're just too soft with them. She said, but are you getting the results? She said, yeah. She said, okay, so you're getting the results you want. Don't worry about how soft you think I am to my team. I have to treat my team a certain way to make sure they want to come to work, to make sure that when I ask them to do something, they go above and beyond to do it. She said she had a team who used to work late evenings, weekends. So she said, it's so important when you're managing a team to make sure that your team knows that you are fighting for them and you're not just there to get this paycheck at the end of the week, month, whatever. And then the second, we were talking about, we were on central bank, you know, like when regulators coming in and what's not. And So I asked her, because certain things she brought up about central bank, central bank can make you do this. Central bank can make you do that. Like, I know central bank could tell you, the CEO that you are, change it. We ain't having it, right? But she said too, she was at an organization where the Mlr Role, she said she honestly didn't understand why this Mlr Role was there for so long. She said, and then it dawned on her that I guess the organization probably was waiting until the central bank left, because it would have looked bad had they changed the Mlr Role again within the space of, I think, less than 8 years. So could the central bank, well, I think I know the answer. They could make you change the Mlr Role, but if you see something in your organization is not going right and you feel as if you need to change a certain person in order to fix it, why is it so hard to explain it to the regulators that you needed to move this person because they just weren't doing it right? Like, people are afraid of the regulators.
They don't want somebody who can do it right for this year. They want somebody, remember now, compliance is supposed to be independent of the business. They want a puppet. They want somebody who they can control. They want somebody who they can manipulate. And so they are the people that last very long. These CEOs don't want to be told what to do, and they don't want anybody to point out when they are wrong. Mm-hmm. So if you see them holding on to somebody and you know that person isn't performing, you have to now look at, do I really want to be a part of this company?
Wow.
So remember I told you the story about the good pastor that was just removed from the Ministry of Finance. Okay, jobs are very, very hard to find. This man was fired for stealing from 2 other banks. How could you be fired for stealing? Don't you have to produce a police record? How did the Ministry of Finance hire you? How? Okay, and so all I can say is the person who needed a second signature knew that Pastor Johnson was a thief and said, listen, we can hire him. So when we need that second signature, we can roll up on him and we know he can sign. Yeah. Right? Because how possible? Stealing from 2 banks and you still get hired. And I've seen that oh Lord bless the man. So he just passed away last year. Man, he was fired from every single bank in Nassau for unscrupulous deals and stealing and all sorts of stuff. And he was a good 7-day Adventist. And I remember, I think it was CIBC fired him Friday. Monday morning, he was FinCo as the assistant manager or something. Okay? And he spoke eloquently. He sang the national anthem. He played the piano. And he was like the face of the organization. And then when he stole, they brushed it under the rug. He stole again. Okay, it was so big that they had to let him go. In 1 week, he was at another institution as manager and head of this or that. Okay, so his network was extremely strong. Okay, or whoever was hiring him knew that I could roll up on him and get that second signature and we could steal this money. So always look at the facts, look at the details, everything that appears to be one way. Sometimes you have to investigate and see the true picture. Okay, so like I say, I'm never surprised anymore at why these people stay so long in the position. And when I see a manager who is in charge of everybody, that person is just there to frustrate these people, so they leave. Okay, and that's what we do not want to do. We want to develop enough future leaders that act ethically, that see this as a problem, that deals with ethics and ensures that these types of problems that exist in organizations are removed and not supported, and so we don't want to just look good on the surface and we buy this staff food every Friday and we have a happy hour and we give them gifts until we treat them right. No, we pay them fairly. We sometimes work overtime, but we don't work overtime for the entire year because we have sufficient staff, right? It's almost like the 2 governments. everybody was saying, well, you get some money from one government, right? They give you $500, and then after that, you vote for them and you don't see them for another 10 years, right? And so essentially that's what some companies are doing. They buying us food on Friday. They letting us come late and leave early, giving us things temporarily that won't benefit us in the long run. Okay, so you have to identify the differences between what is being done and what ought to be done. And are they just making us feel good, or do they truly care about us? Okay, you work overtime for 2 or 3 months, not an entire year. After 3 months, the company, if they truly care about you, they should make a decision that, okay, we need an additional staff member because these people have lives. Okay, you shouldn't come early and stay late every day. Companies set out goals and objectives. They have value statements and mission statements. We should all know, what the goals and the mission statement and the values of the company is. We should work every day to help the company, achieve these strategic goals. What another issue is that these companies put these mission statements out and nobody knows them, and definitely nobody lives there. Okay, and so in the Enron, where Martha Stewart went to jail, the Enron case, it found that they had all these, very nicely put statements and missions, and they were, written in gold and placed about the organization, but nobody knew them and nobody was operating under them. And so they were even charged with making a bunch of baseless statements that made no sense because they weren't enforced. Okay, and so you want to look at your mission statement and you want to see, does it really make sense? Do we really do this, or is this a set of words that sound good? Is this just in place because we need to have a mission statement? Okay, and a lot of times you find that it goes on to say we are disciplined and these are our core values and we want to blow away the customer. And what are we doing? Okay, are we even disseminating this information? Do we start off our morning meetings with these are our goals? Do the staff even know? Okay, and the ones who do know, are they carrying them out? Okay, so you want to ensure that if something happens, we can only mitigate risk. We cannot eliminate it completely. If we are subject to an investigation, will this be one of the issues that arise? Do we have the proper controls in place? Or do we have a document somewhere stored on a drive that nobody knows that 2 signatures are required, or word check is required, or the board must sign, or a certain level must approve? Okay, so be careful of that. Okay, and then there are cultural barriers. While I was with Royal Bank, they were, all about diversity and making sure that everybody felt included. And so a lot of times, and I know we had a manager who was a pastor's wife. And so then we had a lot of gay boys who, well, no, they were really, really good workers. But when the bank wanted to get rid of them, they transferred them down to this pastor's wife branch, and trust me, within a month, she found a way to let them go. Okay, one only survived because he was he was an excellent teller. He went above and beyond. But when Valentine's Day came on his birthday, the entire bank was filled with roses, that everybody in the bank had a rose or a basket or something. You could not get into that location if it was his birthday, and that drove her bananas. That drove her completely crazy. Till eventually she was removed because she complained so much about all of that going on. But did he not do? He did his work, and it was simply because she did not approve of their sexuality. And then when they became flamboyant, that was it. They was gone. Very good tellers, but because, she did not agree with that. And then the company saying that they are inclusive, but then when they all knew I'm getting transferred down to this pastor's wife branch, we know we going home, right? So you wanna be aware of that and establish a healthy culture, ensure that everybody's included. We have some people who are changing their gender. We have, the bathrooms being open in America, and saying that anybody, how do we deal with these things? How do we ensure that we look past, the person's sexuality or where they are from or any type of, racist thoughts that we have and ensure that this person is treated fairly. I had a Muslim teller who had to pray 6 times a day. How do I tell him, no, the teller line of the door is up and ready. You don't have time. I cannot give you those extra times, and I just simply, I did work with him because I had to respect his religion. But I said, perhaps you are better suited in back office. So I worked with him to find a back office position because really, lunch hours starting and he still have to be praying. So, it became a conflict, but I found a solution. And then I had a 7-day Adventist who couldn't be out on sundown and past sundown, and when time changed in like the fall right now, he had to be in at a certain hour. And so he used to basically say, Miss Bullet, it's about to be dark. I know it's only 5 o'clock, but it's 5:30, it could be dark. I gotta go. And I was like, but so you can't just leave your cash, So I had to find a solution for him as well. I said, okay, so I'm gonna speak to head office and let them know that the teller lineup is not the best position, for you. Because if I could, let you go at 3 o'clock every day, I need an extra body. And so, we had to find a solution. He was a good worker, but you have to respect, the differences and the cultures and ensure that you don't make it that person feel like, there's a one size fits all approach, because we have a very diverse world now. We have persons from all around the world with different ideologies and different who are very diverse. So we must find a way to enhance the staff awareness, ensure that we don't now. I think it is the opposite of racism now. It's colorism.
I can't.
Where we are the ones who are now racist. Go ahead, Felicia.
No, I was saying, oh, sorry, I'm not on mute. Sorry, I said I can't.
So you said you can't.
I was making a comment. I didn't realize I was muted.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. So again, you just want to be aware and then make sure that we don't become the ones that are creating a toxic environment and not respecting other cultures and people, differences on their diversity. Okay, so all of that makes up a good culture, ensuring that everybody feels included and everybody feels like they belong, and that the company is going to make accommodations to, or place them in appropriate positions so that, it's not against their religion or any of their beliefs. Okay. Prior to designing this system, we should be aware of the regulatory environment, the principles and the rules. You want to ensure that responsibilities, like I say, clearly defined. When the risk assessment came around in 2018, when recommendation 5 in the FTRA was updated, and in the onset, risk assessments had to be completed on AML in that June of 2019, and then by October in 2019, risk assessments on the entire organization. So they term it enterprise-wide risk assessment, we had a lot of pushback from senior managers, you know, from trust, from HR, from credit. They basically said, well, that's a compliance function or that's a risk function, you know, and we had to get to the point where we explained to them that, you know, compliance is everybody's business. The compliance officer can assist you, but the compliance officer cannot determine what is required from the credit aspect or the HR aspect. And so therefore, we had to put it on their job descriptions. We had to make it a mandatory function that they realize that this would be their responsibility in every year. So yeah, we got a lot of pushback, but luckily everybody's on board after training and they know that, hey, the risk and compliance department is there to support you. They're not there to, you know, do it for you. Because essentially, as the manager, you have to identify the risk associated with your department and ensure that your staff are trained and they understand, you know, the requirements and what needs to happen. And so we made it their responsibility and we just supported them and to ensure that we documented properly the overall risks and that there was awareness and that they were aware of the controls that they needed to exercise on a daily basis to ensure that they protected their various departments. Okay. You want to document the risk appetite, ensure that everybody is aware. We don't want somebody to go out, take the 45-page document, account opening process, and find out that we don't have an appetite for bearer shares, or we don't have an appetite for PEPs, or we don't do business with Russia. Okay, so this is the importance of the risk appetite, and this is important. Once it's documented, then share it so everybody knows that, hey, automatically we don't have an appetite. Why are we entertaining this customer? Why are you even talking to this customer and wasting time if it's outside of our realm and we don't have an appetite for it? Okay. And again, determine the processes that we should implement in reviews. What are we checking for? What are we ensuring that controls are not only documented and understood, but they are carried out. So you want to ensure that there's an internal audit check. Risk has implemented 3 lines of defense, and so everybody should know where they sit in the 3 lines of defense. So normally, the 3 lines of defense are the front line and management is the first line. The second line of defense is compliance, and then the third line of defense is internal audit. So what that essentially means is, you know, front line and management, they carry out the day-to-day activities. Compliance comes behind and you know, ensure that they follow policy and procedure and they remain compliant. And then internal audit comes behind and then checks, okay? To ensure that, you know, any misses are identified and there are reminders that, hey, if you don't follow this procedure, these are the possible outcomes, or to say this procedure isn't effective, we need to essentially add another control. Okay. So back again to culture. Culture drives the way the power and the, you know, flows throughout a company. The way management communicates, like again, we said the risk appetite, the way things are done, and who is compensated and how, and if we have structures in place. All of this shows that we value our employees and we don't want them to be like the police who have to take a tip on the side, or most government employees, because they're undervalued and they're underpaid, and so they easily will accept bribes, right? And so through, you know, training, we are speaking with HR and we want them to know that, hey, this is a risk associated with your department. You want these persons to, help with the fight to combat money laundering, terrorist financing. Can I, give Felicia more pay than she's getting for the work, and help, cause her to compromise herself? Okay. You want to document that. And so you want to make sure that your compensation structures are adequate. So, like I said, we don't end up like the police. They say, I committed this crime, but I'm going to bribe you. Or I can give you something under the table and it goes under the rug. Okay? Are there any questions so far? Because you all are very, very quiet. You're scaring me.
I was taking notes, sorry.
Okay, taking notes. Okay, good. Okay, so then we move on to the role, and we understand culture, and we know that we say a lot of things that sound good, but what actually happens, okay? So we want to streamline ourselves to ensure that what we have documented in policy and procedure and what we commit to in the employee handbook and the code of conduct is actually what is happening. And I know we are far from it, but if we now start the awareness training, essentially we will hold people responsible and accountable for creating a toxic environment or not having proper interpersonal skills and not managing persons correctly. Hopefully we will move to having these discussions, and it doesn't have to be gross negligence before it's identified, but we put processes in place so that, like I say, awareness training. Okay, so we want to move on to the role of the Mlr Role. And of course, like Felicia said earlier, of course, the central bank can remove a person. The Mlr Role is a regulated function, so of course, they have to approve you, so of course they can remove you. And so what has happened now is they've seen that a lot of MLROs have, companies have failed and the MLRO did nothing, or was afraid to speak up, or was in cahoots with the company. And so what they have now is a list of persons that were in prior positions who did not speak up. Like for me, for instance, me being approved of the MLRO, the chairman removing $4 million of people's money and having to be removed by the central bank, having to be removed by by the Supreme Court. Do you think they did not review my file and say, where was Ms. Bullitt in all this? Where was her letting us know that there was a problem? Okay, so they should be able to pull my file and say, see where we had spoke on some occasions about what was happening, okay? Or they pulled my file and saw that I never even called them. I never mentioned it. I never said anything. And so from that, not only that incident, but they are now making a list of people who can no longer be approved because they either sat by and allowed these things to happen and did not protect the customers, or they participated or they colluded. So like I said, they're working on enforcement. And one of the biggest questions from the CFATF is behemoths just law-abiding citizens. Before 2018, nobody had been to jail for money laundering, but of course, it wasn't on our books. But every MLRO is legit. None of them committed any crimes. And of course, like I say, because Brazil is civil law and it's guilty until proven innocent, you do have MLROs all over Brazil being in jail, the former president being impeached, the governor of the central bank going to jail. Okay, so they're looking at various countries around the world, and this is why they wanted to come in and help the FIU to ensure that these persons are dealt with. Okay, so you hold a position and you must be accountable. You can't have your CEO being removed and you never even made one complaint against him. Okay, so you want to be careful with that. So one of my biggest problems is with the MLRO, we're wearing too many hats. Okay, and I think I told you all about the story where we went in to audit one of these major banks and Canadian banks. And when we got in, we had a list of deliverables, and we were continuously referred to one person. And so we said, what exactly is happening? Why does this person have every single thing that we need on a list of 100 deliverables? And we said, is she the coordinator of this audit? And they said, no, she is responsible for risk, compliance, AML, corporate governance, and legal. And we said, really? Okay. And like I said, this was one of the major big banks. And so we said, how many customers do you have? 15,000? And this one person does all of that. So we stopped the audit and said, you have to hire another body. They ended up hiring 3 other persons to satisfy that one desk. So essentially she was swamped. She didn't know her head from her arms. She could make any decision. She was just operating like a merry-go-round. Okay, and so we want to ensure that we do not get caught in this position. Now, excuse me, you have to understand that there are some boutique banks or very small companies that have less than 100 clients. And so if you have that and they're not operational, or you have 50 clients and they're not really operational, you can do that. You can manage more than one position. However, if this is a large organization, it's no use, there's no way you can be a one-man band, okay? And that's happening a lot in the industry where, you know, they don't want to fork out $80,000 for compliance, $80,000 for risk, $80,000 for audit. And so they try and make you wear all of these hats. And so if you find yourself in the position, the first thing you do is, let's get the statistics. Let's put some metrics in place. How many clients are we dealing with? And then you have to decipher, can a one body and an assistant properly manned and properly give oversight to all these clients and all the different requirements of compliance, of AML, of risk, of legal, and you make those determinations. And like I say, you will get some pushback, but essentially the company does not want to spend out all that money plus benefits and bonuses and what have you. But if they have a large number of clients, then there's no choice, or you will be overwhelmed and you will not be able to give proper oversight. Okay, so please make sure that you are not overwhelmed so much that you cannot point out the deficiencies in the company. Okay. And of course, we know what the Mlr does. You know, we receive the SDRs and we review it. We contribute to training. We deal with all the regulatory issues. Risk is a completely different department. However, everything seems to roll up into compliance. Wherever there's a shortfall in the company, it goes up into compliance. Okay, but you have to be mindful that, like I say, with the proper metrics, you should be able to explain yourself that, hey, this should not be my responsibility, or this is overwhelming the process. And like I said, they want to put an internal audit on you as well. And if you are compliance, risk, legal, corporate governance, and or corporate secretary and the internal auditor, you're going to have an instance where the checker checks the checker, and then nobody checks you. And you are a human being and you will make mistakes. And so therefore, you want to be cognizant of that you have an independent body to just assist you in the day to make sure that you don't make mistakes. Okay, so be careful of the organization being so heavily dependent on one person. Some people like it because they want the control. But so you could go to jail. So I prefer somebody to, you know, overview what I'm doing and to ensure that I'm not making mistakes. Okay. Are we clear on the corporate governance? And then normally outside of culture and ethics, there are various committees, various boards. There should be like an account opening committee, and you want to ensure that proper voting rights or the proper persons are on that. So, like for instance, on our account opening committee, our CEO is one of the persons with voting rights. And therefore the central bank came in and said, please remove him because he is actually the salesperson, and we don't want a conflict of interest because he is going to, if he essentially is trying to meet a quota, he's not going to deny any accounts. So remove him from he can come to the account opening meeting as a guest, but he cannot have voting rights because it's a conflict. Okay. And so we had to remove him. And then we have an AML committee and an audit committee. And so all of these would, fall under corporate governance, and this would, how the company is run and who makes these decisions. Okay. Any questions? No? Clear as mud?
Clear as mud.
I kind of have a question, Ms. Miller. So you were saying that the role of the Mlr role, they may try basically like integrate other roles and hats onto you. So for me, for example, my undergrad degree would be in accounting. And how I'm getting this intermediate certification and intention to take the ICA at some point. I'm also trying to do a certification in internal audit. So they may try to even like put that onto me, especially since I would have basically both certifications.
Correct. But like I said, it's okay if you work for a boutique that has less than 100 or 50 accounts, for a very small institution, but you don't want to roll up into a Royal Bank or a Scotia Bank or what have you, if they don't have these positions in place already, because you may find yourself being, but for the most part, Royal and Scotia has like their own legal department. I don't know if they have risk separated from compliance, but you want to ensure that, you are not overwhelmed. And so it's determined by the amount of clients and how operational they are. And that's how you'd make that determination.
Okay, good. So quick question, have we went over the review sheet as well? Because my internet was freaking out, so I missed probably like 40 minutes.
We are heading to the review sheet right now once there are no questions on chapter 10.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. No questions on chapter 10? We looked at the classwork questions and we can answer what are the roles and what should be on the job description and
when it comes to the 3 negatives and 3 positives of AML culture. I know one of the negatives could be trying to get the employees to understand the importance of it.
Okay. Or awareness training.
That's what.
Or people saying, but you're saying trying to get them to understand the importance of it.
Right. So
that's
the question
like a difficulty more so.
Right. That's what I was saying. The question says list 3 negatives and 3 positives of AML culture. So I'm saying one of the negatives are trying to get them to understand the importance of it and, with them actually abiding by it.
And not taking it seriously. Yes. Okay. So what from my answer sheet, it says these are the negatives. It's an avoidable financial burden on the firm. It's politics. You only have to do it because the regulator says so. It stops people from getting access to our products and services. It's too time consuming. Everybody has a job to do. We don't have time or the resources to do this. And this has an adverse impact on sales targets. Nobody's going to bring in all this documentation. We require too much, and this upsets the clients. And so you are, of course, me to lose the business. And then it says the positives are, it helps law enforcement to track criminals. It helps return money to law enforcement to put to good use. It reduces crimes. It protects the integrity of the financial system. It is morally right. It reduces fraud and credit losses. It protects the employee from going to jail. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions? No? Okay, so let's look at the review sheet there. Okay, so let me see. Question 1. I don't have anybody answer question 1, no?
No, that's the question you said that that we'll come with 2 typologies each, and then you'll
Oh.
discuss it a little bit more.
Okay, great. Okay, so who wants to start? Sheena, give me a 2 for question 1. Sheena is there?
Oh, yeah, I was trying to get on. Sorry about that. Okay,
Mhm.
now, basically, I don't know if you wanted it all on any of the topics, but I choose check, fraud, and bribery.
Right, so there were 7 cases at the back of the book. Right?
Was that on
And
the
so you
Eggman
would
group
have,
on that page? Sorry, was it on the Eggman group on that page where we had the fraud questions? Is that where you're supposed to get these points from?
yeah,
So I did the check, fraud, and bribery.
okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so in reference to check fraud, the check fraud is making the unlawful use of checks in order to illegally acquire funds that do not exist in an account. So I found a case earlier this year with 3 persons in Freeport where they had these Royal Bank checks drawn on the credit union that they tried to get goods from, like Kelly's and other establishments. So this is an ongoing case now. So these persons are now locked up in jail. They were actually found out, and they're now in jail awaiting trial. I haven't seen any update on the trial and results on that, but that was a case of check fraud. Fine.
Okay.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just did it in a nutshell. I didn't know if you wanted me to I just put the case in a nutshell.
Okay, so the question speaks specifically to the Eggman group, right? There are 7 cases under fraud. One talks about arms, one talks about tax, one talks about a Ponzi scheme, forgery, fraudulent Western Union, and then funds. Okay, and so essentially, I expect it's going to ask, does any of this happen in the Bahamas? And if it does, talk about the case. So you would perhaps write, let's talk about structuring taxes. Okay, so you would write about the case that they talk about in the book, and then you do an overview.
What if I do my own case other than what's in the book?
No, but it speaks specifically to the Eggman group, though. No, so if you went outside of this and then, because the Eggman group is online, it's the FIUs across the world, right? And so there are other cases, right? But the book specifically talks about the case in Serbia, right? So the expectation is that you would write an overview of the case in Serbia, and then you would say, in the Bahamas, very popular singer Shakira tried to, how to avoid taxes, and you do an overview of that case and say that, you comparing it to, yes, this has happened before, and
Oh, I got the misunderstanding then. I didn't know I was supposed to compare it with a case in the back and then do one for the Bahamas. My apologies.
Yeah. So it's the same thing that you would have done for homework. Did you answer question 1 for homework?
Yes, I did my examples for Bahamas, but I didn't compare. I just put like for structuring for tax avoidance, I write about what tax avoidance is, and then I created a situation with a case in the Bahamas in
Right.
reference to tax avoidance.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So
Okay, so same thing.
Okay. So I
Okay.
didn't do that then.
Okay, good. But be clear and we understand what is required. Was anybody else confused as to what was required? No?
Yes,
Okay.
I think I did
I didn't
something
do
a little
that.
different. I didn't.
No? Okay, so who did? The Candace? Tell me what you did. For question 1.
For question 1, okay, what I was actually going to ask is, because you're saying what we could do in the exam if a question like this comes up. I didn't do it. But you're saying that.
This question is going to
for
come up. This is the mandatory question. So this question is going to come up. So everybody needs to know this question. This is a mandatory question that is worth 20 points.
Ms. Ballard.
Hi.
Hello?
I can't hear you, Alicia.
Sorry,
Y'all
I
can
have
hear
a
me?
question. So you made mention, you said, for example,
Can you all hear Candace? Because I can't hear Candace.
No,
oh,
she
no,
can.
I'm here.
Okay, so
Okay, so I was asking, you're saying regarding, like, for example, with the structuring taxes, you're saying one, review the case or give an overview, and then also bring a local example of like something that happened here in the Bahamas. That's how we
Yeah.
answer that question.
yes.
Okay. Okay.
You still there, Candace?
Oh, that's it. That's all I wanted to know.
Oh, okay. Alicia?
What I wanted to say was, okay, I haven't written out my study sheet yet for question 1 because I did it for homework, right? But what I did for homework, maybe this may help. What I did was I chose 2 cases. I think I did tax evasion and I did the fraudulent Western Union, right? I think that's what it, no, the Ponzi scheme, I think. So what I did was I described what happened in the case. So I gave an overview of all the players and everything like that. I described what was tax evasion according to the book, what was which was a Ponzi scheme according to the book. And then I gave examples of those instances of where we experienced that in the Bahamas. So like, I think the Ponzi scheme, I did I think the flowers in bloom or those other cases that we had over here, like the pineapple people,
Right.
you know?
Right.
And
you could go right to the Securities Commission website and they have all of them listed under the warnings or notices. Right.
Exactly. So that's why I didn't do that question yet, because I did it for homework, but essentially, basically, I'm writing that back in the essay, just maybe in a more compressed version because my homework was long. So in a more compressed version, because you said that it has to be like a page, right?
Yeah, a page and a half, but this is worth 20 points. So make sure you have enough, points in there. So the other questions are worth 10 points. This particular question will be mandatory and it's worth 20 points.
Okay, Ms. Ballard, I
Hi.
notice in the exam, I get so focused on trying to write the exam, time starts to run out on me.
Okay, so 20 minutes for each question.
Okay,
20
and
minutes.
as best into a essay format as I can, but I can do where I'm listing my points if I find that I'm running out of time.
We will only accept a list for your last question. We have had persons when I offer that you can, if you run out of time, you can list. They don't understand that. They start from question 1 and write us a list. You cannot do that. We will accept only the last question on your paper as a list. Any other question, you will lose points.
Okay.
Anyone willing to send that question number 1 homework question? I think I asked a few times, but I don't.
Yeah, Felicia, I just sent it. I just have to write it out, like take out a bunch of unnecessary things.
Okay, thank you.
But I'm willing to send it. I just haven't gotten to it yet.
Okay, thank you. Who's that? Alicia?
Alicia, yes.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
No problem.
So are we clear on what is required for question 1?
Ms. Bullard, I
Yes,
have a
ma'am.
question about question 1. I have a further question, please.
Go ahead.
Is it that the question will ask for a specific type of typology? Because I see there's bribery and corruption, there's drug trafficking, there's fraud.
Yeah, but our topic is fraud. So
Okay.
so each semester there's
Uh-huh.
another topic.
So then it's the cases on fraud.
Yes. And there are 7 cases under fraud. So you can
Okay.
pick any 2 or 3 to
Mhm.
make the comparison to the Bahamas.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. Right.
Hi, sorry, I have a question.
Mhm.
Based on what I submitted for question 1, and you emailed me yesterday. I just wanted to know, can I know now what was missing, or you'll send me a separate email?
Right. I'll send you a separate email in terms of I don't know exactly if anything was missing. Perhaps the time you got some points off all that when you sent it. Yeah. But I'll have to go and look back and see what the cross marker said.
Okay, cool. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Does anybody else want to add to question 1? Or are we clear on what is required and how we are to answer that question? And we understand that it's a mandatory question, so that means it has to be answered. And it's worth 20 points.
I
So Ms.
understand.
Bullet, just to confirm, we pick 2 fraud cases. We do an overview of the case. We give the examples that's pertaining to the Bahamas and give any explanations that can aid in our summation of the cases.
Correct.
Okay.
But again, read what the question asks you. Okay? Read it so you would answer all parts of it. Because I can't give you the exact question, but this is just a good base. And this is why I said, I would recommend you do it for homework. So you would have your research already and you don't have to spend so much time focusing on this. Okay, everybody clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. And anybody wants to add anything to it, or are we good and we can go on to question 2? Good, okay, so who had question 2? Let me go.
I had a question too, Ms. Bullard.
Okay, so that's no, get points.
Okay, the first point I had is that for when sanctions and embargoes are placed on countries, it's when they believe that the countries, the jurisdictions, the regimes, organizations, or even individuals, if they're violating or threatening to violate the laws, this is when sanctions or embargoes would be placed on them. So that was my first point.
Okay.
The second point is that sanctions and embargoes are normally used to encourage a change in the behavior of a target country or regime, to apply pressure on a target country or regime, and as an enforcement tool when international peace and security has been threatened. That was my second point. My third point is that international sanctions may include diplomatic, sporting, trade, or financial/economic sanctions. I don't know if anyone wants me to slow down or to repeat any of it, but I could send it out after also.
Okay.
The fourth point I had is that the FATF standards of 2012, recommendations 6 and 7, set the basic international standards for complying with international financial sanctions. I'm sorry. What point was I on? The fifth point, I think. The use of sanctions can be grouped into 5 main categories. That is counterterrorism, conflict resolution, protection of civilians, non-proliferation, and democratization. Point 6, I spoke about targeted sanctions, what they are, which it applies to both sanctions and embargoes. And it means that there's a targeted restriction focused on individual people or organizations. So then examples of a targeted sanction would be like travel bans on named individuals, bans on exporting equipment, and embargoes on exporting or supplying arms. Those are some examples of targeted sanctions. My 7th point is financial sanctions and what they are. So I have that financial sanctions may apply to individuals, entities, and governments, and they include trade embargoes or boycotts, freezing of assets, bans on cash transfers, and bans on technological transfer and restrictions on travel. And I did number 2 as my homework question, and during my research, I found that financial sanctions are some of the main ones that are used on countries and organizations. My 8th point is that the Office of Foreign Assets Control, also known as the OFAC, of the U.S. Department of the Treasury, administers and enforces economic and trade sanctions. Ms. Bullitt, I forgot to mention the main regional bodies that are responsible, the main international bodies that are responsible for enforcing sanctions. So within the US, that is the OFAC. And then there are regional bodies in the European Union and also the UK that enforce sanctions. So then the framework that a company should develop in order to comply with sanctions obligations. This is my 9th point. It should include documents, policies, and procedures, including risk assessments, basically defining roles and responsibilities, raising awareness, communication, and training. In my homework, I had that management, it should start from the top going down. So management should also be kind of spearheading the whole sanction obligation. If management isn't on board, that's an issue. So continuing, you also have to raise awareness, communication, and training of the staff. You have to have monitoring and screening systems in place that could match individuals against known target lists and sanctions lists. You should have an escalation process for decision making. So if you came across anything that might seem suspicious, what is your process of how you would handle that? And then, of course, the reporting requirements, and then requirements for reviewing the sanctions. And my last point was that companies may use manual and automated screening tools to confirm matches with sanctions lists to regulatory bodies. Then I remember that you said on the exam, a lot of people were looking for the wording, name some examples of sanctions, but you said on the exam, you guys changed it to international obligations. So I went on and I found the international obligations that I'm thinking that the Bahamas has on certain countries. So I have some examples listed for those. I don't know how many you would like me to name. Hello?
I just looking for the examples now. So based on the categories, do you have an example of counterterrorism, conflict resolution, protection of civilians, non-proliferation, or democratization? Do you have any examples?
You mean In terms of what? I just know that what I listed as examples were the countries and the sanctions or the international embargoes that they currently have on international obligations that they currently have on them. Is that
Okay,
what
so
you're asking for?
Not exactly, but you can give me what the countries like Cuba or Iran or what do you have?
For Iran, there are travel bans, travel notification requirements, and then so Iran had like the most. They're proliferation sensitive. They have nuclear and ballistic missile program related embargoes, and then of course they have export bans on arms, and they also have assets freeze bans on them also. And
Okay.
then okay. But what were the examples you were talking about?
But basically, like you said, okay, so remember you mentioned earlier the categories are counterterrorism, conflict resolution, protection of civilians. So
Okay.
I would want an example on non-proliferation. So that's Iran. For example, in my book, I have the Global Treaty of 1970, but of course, Iran and is it North Korea has a non-proliferation sanction on it. It's just,
Okay.
for the research to find out, what it's called. For counterterrorism, we have Libya, 748 Resolution 883, which is the, destruction of the Pan Am flight. These are the very older ones, and then protection of civilians. There's one in Rwanda, Resolution 1265 and Resolution 919. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing the most recent one. Is it Myanmar? MYNAMAR?
Myanmar.
They have a protection of civilians on now. So you can just do some research to get an example on one or two of the categories. Not that you need to have an example for all.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Okay. But were those points in line with what the question was asking?
Yes. You did get a little bit fluffy when you talked about the international, like the OFAC and the stuff. You may not get points for that.
But that's in the book, so
no. When I'm looking at the exam and the question, that's what I'm saying. So it's fine if it's in the book. You want to answer the question, how it's read. So yeah, you touched good on the framework and the categories. You needed some examples, and then you gave good examples in terms of Iran and what have you. I'm just saying, read the question, and you may just say who the international body is, and you may not necessarily get points for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
But any questions on sanctions? No? Okay, and so Diane gave very, very good details, so very good. So sometimes the question asks about the framework, sometimes it asks specifically about the
I was trying to raise my hand.
Oh, you raised your hand? Okay, go ahead.
I was trying to. I just wanted to know for the sanctions, right? Because I wrote my essay already. I also mentioned, how some sanctioned countries were helped during the pandemic. Would that be fluffing or?
No, that was actually a specific question all on its own. Last year, what did countries do? Sanctioned countries do? How did they get assistance during the pandemic? And so that's for homework.
That was on the classwork.
Yeah. So that was a past question, and so I don't. If you add it on the classwork, then probably it won't be on the exam. But yes, that was a good one to do research on. But
so should I keep it or should I take it out? Because I don't want to overfluff.
Yeah, that might, if it's asking about the framework, that might be fluff. If you're using it as an example, you could probably talk about Cuba or Venezuela, or Iran. So you don't need to talk about all of them. Perhaps one of them, and that would give you some points.
Okay, I'll just keep one then. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, number 3. Alicia?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, number
It's
3.
my turn? Okay.
Yeah.
1 second, because I did send it in the group, so I'm just gonna go to that.
Okay, and so I think, I don't know if it was Felicia. Felicia, you said you asked me to touch on risk
Yes, ma'am.
again. And Candace, your question was question 8, but okay, yeah, okay, I see why you asked. Okay, that's fine. So let's do question 3, and then we'll jump to question 1. And then Felicia, you let me know if you need, 3 and then 8. And then Felicia, you let me know if you need more information on risk, okay?
Okay. Okay, so for question 3, appetite framework risk rating. I just did it in points based on what I wrote in my essay. So I have the first point, of course, I sent this to everyone already. The rating is done by the Basel Committee based on countries and jurisdictions. I said that the Bahamas has a rating of 6.46, which would be a considered high or medium level. The FATF, which we know is the Financial Action Task Force, recommendation 1 states that all countries should assess risk and apply a risk-based approach. I spoke about how the risk appetite is how much risk a company is willing to take on, and they can normally allocate up to a certain percentage of high-risk clients. I have that there are 4 components of identifying and assessing risk: the risk treatment, the analysis, the risk identification, and the risk evaluation. I have the risk methodology is how the risk rating is done, and it should clearly outline how it works. To leverage internal and external information, it should be easy to update and explain to staff. I spoke about the 3 lines of defense regarding risk. The first was the front line, second was the compliance officer, and the third was audit. You should risk rate all client relationships by reviewing the KYC and running names daily or per policy to ensure compliance. My 9th point, if a customer goes outside of their profile, and STRs need to be filed and investigated. Any abnormal activity, gut feeling, thought, or uneasiness can justify a STR being filed. And
okay, so that's fluff. That's fluff.
That's fluff.
You only get no points that on risk. Yeah.
Okay, and my last one was the 3 types of ratings: low, medium, high. High risk can be examples of PEPs, or regarding an industry, it could be the diamonds industry, and regarding a country, it could be Haiti.
Okay.
So that's all I put. I don't know if it was more.
Okay. And I would just add that, in establishing the risk, or implementing it in your company, you need AML directive, you need an exit strategy. You mentioned risk appetite, but then the rules and people who would be assigned to ensuring that those controls stay in place, and have a checking mechanism. You want to sample a completed workflow. You want sample key decisions, and you want to verify steps. Then, in your framework. Okay, and then you touched on methodology and understanding and where the information comes from, and that's how you make up the methodology. When you talked about the risk identification, analysis, evaluation, and treatment, you can't give one example of one of them. For example, you just don't want to list and you say, for example, risk identification to a SWOT analysis, or you say risk treatment, we have indemnity insurance, or a process to implement a course of action should anything, should an event occur, or something like that. Okay, but the information you gave was correct in terms of what you would need to answer the questions. And I think in the classwork, that question was already there on the categories, what would be on the risk rating. So can you give us 2 categories that should be on the risk rating form?
Sorry, say that one more time.
Categories on the risk rating form. If you had the risk
I would
rate
be the low,
client,
medium, high.
yeah, but how would you determine if they are low, medium, or high?
Oh.
What would you ask? The nationality, the type of business.
That's kind of what I guess I alluded to. I didn't maybe directly say it because I put that, you know, people who are in the diamonds industry, for example, they would be considered high risk because of the nature of the business.
Okay. But if the question specifically asks, what are the categories that should be on a risk rating form? What would you say?
Low, medium, high.
No, no, it's not low, medium, or high. The category, okay, remember, when we talked about the methodology of the risk rating form and we looked at the country risk rating, we saw that the national framework scoring was a determining factor. We saw that if you're a transit country, that you know, your bribery, your CPI index, all of those determine whether you
Sorry,
are
can you say
high.
that again, please?
Okay, remember when we looked at the methodology of how the Basel Committee decided if a country was high, medium, or low? And there were different categories.
I know what you're talking about. Okay,
Right.
because for us, I looked on the website. For us, we have a 6.46, and they would consider us high because of our financial secrecy
Laws. Okay, so they are not diminished. Those laws are done away with. So now when they update us again, they will not be able to say that we are medium high because of that. What I'm saying is on a risk rating sheet, because remember now, there are 3 levels of risk. At the country level, at the company level, and then at the client level. So at the client level, what are the categories? We check nationality, type of business, type of product or service, correct? Country that you do business with, stuff like that.
Yeah,
so they are the
transaction,
categories.
domiciliarity.
Correct, correct. So just want to ensure you can decipher, make sure if the question asks you anything about the categories on the risk rating form, that those are the categories that you list, not just high, medium, or low.
Sorry, Alicia, I just wanted to add that you don't want to mix up the class with the category. So low, medium, and high would be under class of the risk rating instead of category, because I think you're getting the two confused. So
yeah,
in case you answer that, so the classes are low, medium, and high, but the categories pertains to the country, the customer, and the institution. Would actually give them a high score.
Thank you for that. Okay, great. Any questions on 3, or we can go to 8 and see what Candace adds? Okay, Candace, go to 8 for us, please. Is Candace there? Okay.
Yes, I'm here. Okay, so I'm going to give my 10 points. I'm going to start off by defining the FATF. So that is the Financial Action Task Force, and it's an intergovernmental organization that creates policies for combating money laundering and terrorist financing. So according to recommendation 1 of the FATF, every country or financial institution assess anti-terrorist financing risk. In 2018, the Bahamas included money laundering as a predicate crime. Some examples are fraud, theft, drug dealing, corruption, bribery, tax evasion.
Okay, no points.
No?
No. Recommendation 1, and that's it. Explain to me what it is. Countries must assess their risks and put controls in place to mitigate those risks.
Okay, maybe if I go on, then maybe, can I go on?
Yeah, but none of that you said already. put in there. No.
Okay, okay, noted. All right. So all organizations are now required to submit. All organizations are now required to submit risk assessments. Sorry, all financial institutions are now required to complete a risk assessment. And so examples are gaming boards, accounting, or law firms that would have corporate services, of course, at all financial institutions. As for the Bahamas, just in 2015, 2016, we would have started regulating our gaming industry. And for the accounting or law firms to quarantine as well. All organizations to regulators who compiles the information to determine country risk assessment. Examples of regulators are the Security Commission, Insurance Commission, Compliance Commission, and the Central Bank of the Bahamas.
Okay, no. See, again, all of that is just fluff.
The risk assessment is important because it.
Candace?
Okay. I
Yeah.
understand.
Oh, okay. So the whole point is that we want to talk about recommendation 1 and what happened, you know, in, I guess, after this law was changed in 2018. So recommendation 1, countries must assess their risk and ensure that controls are put in place to mitigate, you know, the risks that they are suggested to. Okay, so that of course trickles down to all of the organizations in the financial service sector. So the first was required an AML risk assessment that was due in June of I guess 2019, and then an enterprise-wide risk assessment, okay, which documented the controls each country, you know, each organization would put in place. Okay, so examples of this is one of the controls. You would say that if we have PEPs on our books, we will say that the board where the compliance officer would approve low and medium, and our AML committee will approve high accounts, high risk rated accounts. The PEPs will be approved by the board. We monitor thresholds. We have a policy that says there are 2 signatures required for, you know, transactions over a certain amount. We had rule-based training. Everyone has to go to AML training. Managers are now required, and they know that it's their responsibility to document the risk in their department and not just make it like a compliance or risk function. Again, then we have the checking mechanism, sampling mechanism, and all of this is documented in our AML directive. And then perhaps you could say we move from a rules-based approach to a risk-based approach. You could talk about methodology if you want. You could talk about risk identification, risk analysis, and risk evaluation. You know, and that's how you would answer that question. You could talk about the rules. You could talk about the levels of risk. Again, like I said, at the country level, the organization level, and then the client level. And when we discussed this chapter, we talked about how, you know, some credit unions were recently regulated by the central bank, and they basically didn't think they had to do it. And they were, you know, the Securities Commission for the entity is they had fined them like $5,000 a day for it being late. Some people got fired because, again, it was a new law on the books. and persons weren't, or organizations didn't take it seriously. Okay, and then you could perhaps talk about the lines of defense and what have you. Okay, but I don't want you to get into, you know, things that don't, well, it will be specific to risk. However, the question is, it will be specific to risk and specific to a recommendation. No.
Specific.
Okay.
Okay.
You sound confused, though. You sound confused. Like you want us to be on the same page.
Yeah, I was going to talk about anything else. Because I think you could help me.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to know if anything else I had here. I note everything else. I'm going to take down everything else.
What in the email I sent you? What was the 4 points I
The
sent
importance
you?
of the risk rating. I have here two.
You breaking up? I can't hear you.
To talk about the risk appetite. Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. I was going to talk also about the risk appetite, risk assessment. I have pointers here on the control library. That as well.
Okay, so go ahead.
Okay. So risk assessments where you would require enhanced due diligence, higher interest rates or fees, for example, at the country level, that would be important for us. Currently, we have junk status, which means that we are definitely high risk.
No, we are not. We can't say that. We can't say that because we are not high risk. We are medium high, and our risk rating has not been completed since 2015-16. And so we are now in the presence of having our risk rating updated. Remember, we went through the risk questionnaire.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so from those questionnaires, they are going to compile information in support of our risk assessment to ensure that it stays at medium, high, and not high. Because if we are risk rated and become high, then we'll have a problem. So we cannot say that we are high because we are not high yet. And we have put processes in place, like we try to decrease the leverage, the trading leverage, which would make us high. We implemented the sand dollar, which would make us less cash intensive. And of course, we know that the cash and goes in the Western Unions are cash intensive, so we strategically implemented the sand dollar through those institutions to reduce the cash intensivity. So okay. don't say that we are high.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Make note of that too, to say that since it hasn't been completed since 2015-16 or updated since that time, we've also implemented different strategies such as the cash dollar, such as the sand dollar, to combat any medium high rating we had. Can we make that a point in our essay?
Yes.
And also I wanted to ask quickly, I had the risk assessment, 10 categories of criminal risk, regulated risk, legal risk, reputational risk, all that stuff. Do I need that or is that fluff?
Yeah, I think the I can't give you all the exam question, but that sand dollar point would be beneficial if you read up on that. And like you say, the reputational or concentration risk, and have an example for it.
Okay, thank you. And one last question, I promise. Is it the case that Candace's question and my question kind of overlap? like I could take some of the things that Candace said to answer my question, since she spoke about risk appetite, risk identifying and assessing the risk.
Correct. So
Okay.
there are gonna be 10 choices. You only have to choose 4. And I would choose, if there are 2, if you're answering risk, if there are 2 questions on risk, answer both. If there are 2 questions on sanctions, answer both, like that. Because you would find that some of the information would be beneficial and you get points for the 2 questions. Okay? But
Okay.
just ensure that
Thank you.
you read the question and all the parts and make sure you understand what the question is asking. Candice,
Okay.
are we clear now? I'm sorry if I didn't give you enough information to, I know, you know, you would ask for more information, but are we clear? Are we on the same page? And are you comfortable now with what the question may ask?
Yes, because, I'm really glad that I even chose this, because
You're breaking up.
I would have given this to here, like you said.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Hello?
I can hear you now.
Okay, sorry. I was saying, yeah, I'm glad I chose it.
Okay, I can't hear you anymore.
Okay. Okay, can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, I was saying I'm glad we went over it, because I thought I was answering it correctly. But I'm also going to review everything you said and write this over for the exam.
Okay,
Yes.
great. But see, it's
point
easy, like, because there's so much information, it's very easy to pick up the fluff rather than to answer the question. So the whole point of this is to help us ensure that we scale down and get the information, you know, that will give us the points. Okay?
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
so thank you too. Thank you for speaking up and saying, you know, and the work that you did. I appreciate that. And now that we are clear. So let's now see that if Felicia has questions. Go ahead, Felicia.
I'm good, thanks. I was making my notes as they were going. So if you guys would also send me your notes, I'd appreciate that.
Okay, yes, and then read in the chat that this means saying it is tricky, right?
Yes.
But so
I honestly
please ensure
always
that you
stay away from it. That will honestly be my last choice, but I still want to be
The
competitive.
way it looking like this is a risk exam. So I'm guessing at least 2 questions is gonna be on risk. Miss Bullard,
Yeah.
tricky like that.
Yep.
Leslie, and I am not tricky now.
Miss Bullard, your
questions,
questions, you will have 2 questions worded the same. Just like in intro, I answered one question, and when I turn over and look at the next question, I was like, well,
The same thing
I already
again.
answered this question. And then I
Yep.
have to reevaluate my answers.
But that is there to help you. That is there to help
me
you.
what?
In the exam? For 3 hours?
That is there to help you, because if you have the answer for one, you'll have an answer for both. You just have to ensure that you read the question. And I always put it like that to help you.
What if you answer the question
Don't
wrong
cause
the
me
first
mix
time?
myself right up, Miss Bullard. I feel like I just answered this question wrong.
Yeah, what if you answer the question wrong the first time and put the same answer the second time? So you get
Then
both
you get it
wrong.
wrong twice.
Cheers, make you second guess yourself.
No, that means you don't fully understand, because I think I know what questions you were talking about: money laundering versus money laundering comparison against terrorist financing. And so if you would have answered the money
I
laundering,
actually answered that in the homework question. I got it right. It was something else that you asked. I think that mixed me up, and I was freaking out, because then the time started to run down, and 7 essays and 3 hours was starting to get to me. So I was going crazy.
okay, but luckily you only have 5 this time, but still 20 minutes for each, and then
this time.
and then go back and check over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. but you can do it. This is very achievable. I mean, it may sound like a lot up front, but it's definitely, all of you are here, so it's definitely been achievable, right?
It is.
No comment.
It is. Virtual is just, your attention span have to be on point.
Or you have the recordings. Yeah, go ahead.
Do we need to mention, I mean, let me not ask that. If I mention products and services risk, delivery risk, customer risk, and geographical risk, would you consider that fluff?
If you're not going to explain it, you don't need to list all of them, but with an example, people just like, you list all of them with no examples. So if you say, for example, if you were dealing with a high risk country or a product and service that was considered high risk, like cryptocurrency, you know, if you would give an example, then you get full points. But you don't just listing all these various things and not explaining, you tend not to get any points.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. Okay, good. So we have the risk down pack, and we have an idea of what types of questions may be asked, right? Let's look at question 4. Okay, I don't have anybody for question 4. And so I had a class or 2 ago that complained that they didn't only want the Eggman group question, they wanted a choice for the mandatory questions. They didn't like the Eggman group at all. I think that's when we was doing corruption and bribery. And I thought that would have been easy because for the first time we had our MPs brought before the court. So I say, how could you not find an example, you know? But in any event, they had asked for an additional mandatory question, and it was on the IMF, the CFATF, and the AML deficiency. So of course, it just takes, again, a little research. You would have gotten the mutual evaluation agreement report, at the beginning of the semester, and we saw what the CFATF said. We saw that we were deficient in 22 of the 40 recommendations, and we knew the ones that we were deficient in. So, of course, the tax, of course, sanctions, the non-designated financial entities, risk, what else? Terrorism. And so essentially what you would do is just go to the findings page and pick out 3 of the deficient ones and write exactly what the Bahamas did. So we started the beneficial owners registry, we licensed the law firms, the accounting firms, and real estates. We made them report to the Compliance Commission. We updated the Anti-Terrorism Act. We made the risk assessment recommendation 1 a requirement, made it mandatory. So there are various initiatives the Bahamas took on, and we are updating the country risk assessment. So this is to me, very easy question to answer, but when person C requires research, they, flip out. So, like I said, it was so you could have a choice between the Eggman group and the Bahamas deficiencies, but I think this is now just a regular one of the 10 choices in there somewhere. So it's a very easy question to answer. Again, look at the mutual evaluation, page, pick 2 or 3 of the deficiencies and see. There's an update sheet from the mutual evaluation because at one point the opposition had come in and say government isn't doing what they need to do to clear these. So they put out a report on exactly what they did to, the various fixes and how we are now complying in 30 of the 40 and largely complying in the other 10. Okay, so all of that, that's how you would answer that question. Okay, is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay, good. Okay, so question 5, Sheena.
Okay, tax avoidance, tax evasion, W8, W9, WG, and E. The U.S. has led an effort to protect U.S. taxpayers from unlawfully evading U.S. taxes. The QI and the foreign account tax compliance was put into place. It is because of these two rules, persons are required to disclose their taxes. The W-9 is for both U.S. and U.S. corporation and individuals to fill in. It is used to get the correct PIN number for persons who are required to file information return to the IRS. The BAN-E is filled out by an entity. It is used by foreign companies doing business in the U.S. The W-8 is for foreign individuals who earn an income from the U.S. business but are not non-resident.
Okay. Sheena, let me just interject. And those are very popular multiple choice questions where persons always get confused. Okay, so please ensure that you understand exactly which each one is, because the choices are going to be close. So make sure you understand them. Go ahead, Sheena.
Tax evasion is where a person or company tries to avoid paying taxes illegally by not reporting the correct taxes paid. This can be done by falsifying, example, like custom receipts, underpaying taxes, false tax receipts, and hiding interest. Tax avoidance is where taxes are paid legally through ways to minimize payments. And some examples are cost-efficient devices, claiming capital allowance, and pension schemes. If taxes are mandatory taxes are mandatory contributions collected by the government. The IRS collects federal income tax. The Bahamas, the Ministry of Finance collects tax. So in conclusion, understanding what triggers a tax situation can cause a taxpayer to manage their finances to minimize the impact of taxes. What else? What am I missing?
What you said, the Ministry of Finance collects taxes.
I know they collect tax and they have national insurance to collect the tax for us. I just was trying to put an example.
So the book talks about withholding tax, income tax, VAT, and all duty. So do we know who collects what?
I mean, okay, I went on what you gave. So I supposed to put on withholding tax also on value-added tax?
No, I'm just, because I know somebody asked about multiple choice questions, so I've seen them, you know, in the past. Who collects duties? Who collects? What is withholding tax? What is, you know, I've seen them before as you know, multiple choice questions.
Okay.
In the shoebox.
Could somebody mute their mic, please? Everybody except Sheena? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So, okay, Sheena, thanks. You want to add anything else, or that was it?
No, that's it.
That's it? Okay, good. Do we have any questions on tax, or is it clear as mud? Clear? Okay. Okay, very good. Culture and the Mlr Role job description, and we just talked about that. And so, Stevania. Mr. Vanya there?
Hi, I'm here. I was trying to take my mic off of mute.
Okay.
1 second. Okay, so for culture, I have policy documents or procedure manuals. The culture of the organization and its attitude towards the risk of money laundering are intangible and therefore difficult to both assess and to influence. I have all institutions should provide some level of training to employees, but a culture of compliance goes beyond once a year mandated training. So I know at the bank I work at, before initially it was rare that you do compliance like on a daily basis, but like every month or so there is like not really like a questionnaire or some information on it where everyone is aware of compliance and the MLRO and other functions. So what else? It's important to embed compliance in the everyday workflow and to set foundation and expectations for individual behavior across the organization. Am I on the right track? I don't want to continue if I'm on the wrong track.
I mean, it's a bit fluffy. You want to specifically, I think the question is gonna ask about issues or, you know, more ethics and integrity type of question.
Okay, like if the MLR was getting like pushback from the board because she didn't allow, I think you had a client when you said they do pornography and they was asking why you want to accept the money, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So that would be one of the issues that certain, you know, people can't use their, I guess, discretion or because the person provided the IT platform for because it was for pornography, they didn't want to take it on the business. Pornography itself is not legal in the Bahamas, but providing an IT platform, you know, is. So we want to talk more about tune from the top. What are some of the negatives and positives? What responsibilities of management is, the importance of integrity and culture and ethics and stuff like that. And then the job description, you want to ensure that the compliance officer isn't overwhelmed, that they are independent, and that they are not intimidated, that they have adequate resources, and adequate statistical data to know, you know, how many bodies or persons is needed to carry out the function.
Okay, also, thank you for that question. Would the responsibility of the MLRO be needed for this, or that's still a part of the role? Like receive STRs and evaluate?
Correct, yeah. So you want to say that, of course, it's a regulated function, and then what they receive, they investigate, they submit, and what happens.
Okay.
And a common issue is that they have to wear too many hats. And you know, that institutions do not want to make that investment, you know, in hiring a compliance and risk.
Team,
Yeah.
Okay.
Or they don't want to invest in the systems that you need to go
to do daily monitoring, like nightly.
Yes.
Bridger and stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that information.
Okay, Felicia, you want to add something?
I was gonna just give a few points that I had from intro, but you made some of them. She could also make mention in there somewhere that even though the MLRO is responsible for all of this, the board is responsible for managing risk. Just throw that in there. She could also talk about, let me see where I am here, because you touched on a few of them. Did you say that it's an independent function, Ms. Fuller?
Yes, I said it should be independent of the business.
Yes.
And there should be no common
interference.
A common
right?
problem is that there's intimidation.
Yeah, and then you could also know that the MLRO is the person that will be fined or penalized. Pretty much, yeah.
Vigna, would you say the MLRO is the person that will do what?
Fine or penalized?
Fine or penalized.
No, the law has now expanded that anybody in the organization, the CEO, the receptionist, anybody, and that's why the whistleblowing policy is important, because
I think it's 10,000 or more based on it.
Yeah, but there are fines for the company as well as an individual. So it used to only in the old law, it was only the MLRO would go to jail. Now everybody in the organization who had a part in the money laundering or what have you would go to jail, not just the MLRO anymore.
Okay.
Okay. All right, you want to add something else or no? That's it.
No, that's it.
Okay,
You touched on
so-
something I was gonna say.
Okay, so good, very good, ladies, and very good information. And so we should be comfortable with asking, answering that culture. Sorry?
Ms. Willard, I wanted to know if persons in the class felt comfortable sending their questions that they did in the group.
Yeah, I think that's what Felicia was asking, eh?
Yeah, but we've been asking for people to send that one. I don't know if they probably just wasn't finished, but I mean, I don't know.
Oh, I didn't send my questions because I just got mine graded and emailed back last night, but I can send it over to you guys in the chat.
Okay, and if you're not comfortable, it's fine. So I know you ladies have asked a few times, sometimes people don't like to share their information, so that's fine. So just for the ones that you get, be thankful, and then the ones that you don't get, just go and do your own research so we don't pressure anybody. Okay? Felicia,
Hi.
is that good? Is that fine?
Oh yeah, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, some people may just want to say, no, I ain't giving you my weakness. So for those
Well, I
ones
can say
that,
that too. I can say that too. If they don't share with me, I ain't sharing mine with them either. This is a group
no,
effort.
Felicia, you'll be better than everybody. Everybody
No,
has,
Miss
a
Bella, but we
different
have to
view.
be fair. We have to be fair because if you did a question and got graded, I didn't do the question. So by asking you to just share your information, you don't want to share it. But from week one, they could tell you I send them all my notes from intro. Anyone who asks me, I email or WhatsApp them everything. I don't have a problem with it. So I just not gonna ask them all, but I don't want no one feel as if I asking them to share a question with me, they don't want to share it, but I'm gonna send all my notes to them. We gotta be fair.
I thought everyone
Now, if you
agreed
mean
to
in
share the
class, or some
question, so let's just not deter from class, the review class.
Sorry, Whistleblowing, we didn't hear you.
No, I said I thought everyone agreed to share their question, so let's just continue with the review class. We
Okay.
don't want the conversation to go left.
Okay, because it's easy to go south right away. Okay,
Yeah, I
number
mean, I thought
7.
everyone agreed, but no, it's no biggie.
Yeah, but I'm just saying at this point, if you haven't received, I wouldn't ask again, because if everybody agreed, just leave it up to them to send it. If they don't, then you have to go out and do your own research.
Exactly.
Then, and that's not bad for if you have 5 out of the 7 questions,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's not bad. Okay. Felicia, number 7.
Sorry, let's go down. I have my document open, sorry. All right,
Sorry,
so
I can't hear you.
Could you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, so SDR's monitoring system, cooperation with authorities. I pretty much touched on what an SDR is, how SDRs are spotted. We'll go to my next page.
Yeah, so it's really important to understand what makes a transaction unusual.
Yeah.
So you want to go through that first so we can ensure that everybody knows what makes it unusual.
Pretty much what makes it unusual is if it is outside of the parameters of the account itself. Like if you say that when you open your account, if you said that you're going to be doing, just paying salaries, but now you're starting to deal with all kind of buying stocks and what's not, that's a suspicious transaction because you said the only thing that you would be doing is paying salaries. So you would have to pull that. I went on to talk about who you should report an SDR to, that's the FIU. I talked about recommendation 20, which pretty much says if a financial institution suspects or has reasonable grounds to suspect that funds are the proceeds of criminal activity, they should report it. I went on to talk about section 14 of the Financial Transaction Reporting Act, which provides that financial institutions should know, suspect, or have reasonable grounds to suspect that the transaction or proposed transaction involves criminal conduct. I went on to say who's responsible to deter. It's everyone's responsibility pretty much to just keep their eyes open. The MLR is the person who you should report it to. the FIU portal, it used to be a manual system. Now they actually have it automated. You just have to register with them first, of course, to get your credentials for it. That's pretty much all I have.
Okay, so when we talk about monitoring systems, I have a question asked, what is the monitoring system in your organization to assist you with identifying suspicious transactions? Can you answer that?
Say that again, sorry.
What is the monitoring system in your organization to help you or to assist you with identifying suspicious transactions?
Okay, so some people have manual and some people have automated systems. Monitoring ensures that the institution will be able to identify any significant changes or inconsistencies in the pattern of transactions. You have some people that have ongoing automatic name searches. People
World check.
Correct, the name search, yes, the world check and all that. Some people put in place that any third-party transactions are flagged, any transactions to sanctioned countries or individuals are flagged, transactions over a certain amount are flagged. Any transactions for, of course, high risk or PEP clients, they are automatically flagged.
Okay. How do you safeguard information and cooperate with the authorities?
How do you
maintain customer confidentiality and cooperate?
I think you're saying by only giving them what they ask for and not everything.
Correct.
Correct. So if you ask for ABC, just give them ABC, even though, like, let's say they ask for information on you, Ms. Bullet. They ask for information only on your account. They don't know that you are also affiliated with another account. If you ain't asking for that other account, I ain't telling you. You ask me about Ms. Bullet's personal account, I give you information about Ms. Bullet's personal account.
Right, and you just don't hand over the entire file. If they ask for
whatever
one
you
wire,
ask for is what you get. And you could also go back to when they say they're looking for a transaction, you know, for $20,000. You can go back to them and tell me which date it's on. Because you could have 6 transactions for $20,000. I'm not giving you information on 6 of them. But if you could tell me which day you're talking about, okay, I have a transaction for $20,000 this day. So I could give you that transaction. But I'm not going to give you all the transactions for $20,000 that I have.
okay. And so I have, in my training with my company, I've told them to stop saying that compliance is compliance is stop your transaction, or compliance is doing an investigation. I had to I try and explain that to them, but they don't understand. And so they said, so what do I tell the client? I said, okay, I filed an SPR. What are you going to tell the client now? Okay, this the FIU has come back and frozen this account. What are you going to tell them? Okay, so we are trying to come up with, we sent the terms and conditions, and we simply said that we have the authority to not, hold your funds for 5 days, because that's what our terms and conditions say. So we have to move away from saying that compliance has this on hold or compliance is investigating, because like Felicia said, it is a form of tipping off. So just some awareness training and try and come up with, our terms and conditions, or we are processing it, and compliance does not have to give an explanation as to what is going on or what is happening. And now, if that client wants to come in and see the CEO, he is welcome to. Compliance does not see customers. Okay, and we don't speak to customers.
Miss Bullard, I don't know if you guys discussed the homework for chapter 8 and 9 last class, the one with the example, whereas with the receptionist called and said that the FIU and the Commissioner of Police are in the lobby. Did you guys discuss that?
I don't know if anybody asked but yeah, do you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to go over it to make sure. Pretty much it's saying, the receptionist called and let you know that FIU and the Commissioner of Police are in the lobby requesting to see the Mlr Role. They have a warrant and want to carry out an inspection based on an SDR file on a PEP client. So the first party was, what are your next steps? So I said the Mlr should establish a good relationship with the FIU, as the key of compliance is to manage the relationship the FIU with the FIU and the regulators, they should have direct contact to this person, correct?
Correct.
If I'm them, you shouldn't have to go to receptionist to see me. You should be able to contact me right away because no one needs to know something going on here.
No, but I mean, they just, to the receptionist, they walk into the bank and that's the first person they see.
Mhm.
Right, and they
Okay.
request to see the Mlr Role. Do we hide from them and say, oh, no, no, no?
No?
No, because you're
Yeah.
required by law to disclose
go.
if they have the proper documentation requesting information.
Correct, and so you wanna put them in the office where you can have a
Correct.
confidential conversation. You don't wanna announce it. I mean, the receptionist already knows, but she should have a level of confidentiality already. So you put it in the private office. I would not speak to the police. The whole point of that question is persons feel like, oh, I'm the MLRO, I can handle this. No, I would get a witness. I would call legal and get some advice, and I would ask them to, come along with me, or the CEO, whomever is available. But I will not, have that conversation by myself, because you could be liable and they can be taking a report and you may have to show up in court and give a statement. And so I would just listen and not give any detail right up front. I will look at their production order and I will ask, can I have 24 hours or 48 hours to produce this document? Because again, I would want legal to vet that and ensure. Now, we did have that incident where they came in and they came for an employee. Again, we did ask, can we have 5 minutes with this employee? And they say, 5 minutes or you will be under arrest. So we took the employee into another office and we said, we're going to give you the opportunity to resign. And he wrote his resignation letter right there. And then we went back and we said, okay, he is ready. Can we please walk him downstairs? So as to the cameras and everything and everybody who already standing by the window, you know what I mean? Can we, decrease the amount of reputational risk that the company may suffer now, seeing one of the employees being handcuffed and dragged out? So they said, okay, fine. And they allowed us to walk him downstairs. And as soon as we let him out the door, they handcuffed him, turned on the siren, blah, blah, blah. I thought it was crazy. Like, I felt like they drove past 5 times, so people could come outside. So, yeah, so you have to be cognizant of the reputational risk of the company when things like this happen, when, the news may report Royal Bank employee arrested and, and people automatically think, I have to go and move my money because the staff is thieves, or something happened. So you want to be aware of, things like that. And then again, only providing information and being very careful of what you say, because we had that incident because we just before we closed, we were being sued by the French government. And so, that MLRO and that account manager and CEO had to fly to France to give testimony. Okay, so be careful of what you say, and because it could be used against you. Okay, but at the same time, you must cooperate.
Yeah, that's actually on all parts of that question. Thanks.
Right. Okay, you're welcome. Okay, Whistleblowing.
Okay, question 9. So the U.S. Patriot Act was proposed following the attacks of 9/11. Its primary purpose is to discourage and punish terrorist acts in the U.S. and around the world, and to enhance law enforcement investigatory tools. It expands the government's ability to look at records on an individual's activity being held by any third party. Section 319 allows for the United States to seize money from foreign accounts associated with money laundering or any activity that would be a crime in that foreign jurisdiction. Section 319 makes it so that money deposited in a foreign account is considered to be deposited in the interbank account of that bank and is subjected to seizure by the United States. Section 319B, the Secretary of the Treasury or the United States Attorney General may issue a subpoena or summons to any foreign bank that maintains a correspondent account in the United States to obtain records relating to that account, including records maintained abroad, or to obtain records relating to the deposit of funds into that foreign bank. And with that, a lot of our
local banks and the Canadian banks, they use correspondent banks to send wires. So that's a way of which the United States would be privy to that information, because we use correspondent banks in order to send wires to the US and around the world.
Right, and they have strategically had all these correspondent banks filter the money to the US Fed, so they will have access to it.
Right.
Right.
So also, if the foreign banks fail to comply with a subpoena or fails to initiate proceedings to contest that subpoena, the Secretary of the Treasury or US Attorney General, after they consult with each other, may by written notice direct the bank to terminate its relationship with the foreign correspondent bank. If that bank fails to terminate the relationship with the correspondent bank within 10 days of receipt of that notice, they could be subjected to fines up to $10,000 per day. Section 319B also imposes the following additional record-keeping requirements, which maintain correspondent accounts in the United States for foreign banks, and they must maintain records in the United States identifying the owners of such foreign bank. They must maintain records in the United States identifying the name and addresses of a person residing in the US and authorized to accept the legal process for recording for records regarding the correspondent account, and they have to respond within 7 days after they receive the written notice from the federal law enforcement officer. So that's what I have for that question.
Okay. What about the US currency?
I didn't understand that part about US currency. I was trying to figure out if I should incorporate the fact that we use the W-9 form for individuals, and they must record, if they were born in the US or they have a social security, if they have to advise the bank. I wasn't too clear on that part.
Okay, can anybody help her? Is anybody else clear?
Is this where it says that all US, 1 second, Miss Bullard.
Okay.
I know that FATCA, is this where FATCA comes into play?
No.
No, see, I was confused because it only has / US currency.
Is it where they said
trying
the
to tie the
US?
two?
Okay, let's see if Deanne has it. Go ahead, Deanne.
It says the US dollar transactions must be cleared through the New York Dollar Clearing Center.
So that's one part, part, and the US dollar is what, extra territorial?
Right.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
it did say that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the part that I want you to explain. The fact that it's extraterritorial, and that's how they are allowed to do this, because we are the foreign institution. We are the Bahamas. How are you implementing US law on the Bahamas? And so they strategically set up their currency that way, set up all the correspondence going through the Fed, and this is how. So once you accept US currency, which most countries in the world do, this law is applicable to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody want me to send, y'all want me to send my review on this now and then just send the US currency part later, or send everything together?
Yeah,
Felicia?
yes, please,
I guess
Weston.
whatever you choose to
Yes,
do,
you can do
because
it.
you've got all the
Okay.
information.
I'll send this part and then do the US currency part and send it later.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, great. Okay, question, any other questions? Are we good? Okay, we understand section 319. Okay, good. So on the Wolfsburg question, and this was a popular question, and a lot of people answered it and they got it right. The Wolfsburg questionnaire asks you if your company in an outside jurisdiction or a foreign jurisdiction, is this law applicable to them? And you answered yes, and you said why. Okay.
Okay.
Leandra, question 10.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry, 1 second. I just finishing up a note about that question 9 just now.
Okay.
Okay, so my question is customer due diligence and enhanced due diligence. So as we discussed in class, customer due diligence is basically done on any client. It's whether it's a proposed client or a client that is existing.
It's the minimal documents that are required for identification purposes, such as passports, a bill or something to prove your residence address. And it doesn't have to be for a specific transaction. It could be for a prospect transaction. It could be for an ongoing transaction, a one-off transaction. It's just information that is accumulated for every transaction or client. It differs when it comes to collecting due diligence for companies or organized, or whether it's an offshore company or onshore company, as well as collecting information for individuals. So individuals, like I said, basic passport, address proof. It depends on if you have a domicile in another country, then you may have to provide more information. When it comes to a corporation, it's you need the memo and arts, certificate of incorporation, nature of business. Depending on the institution, they may require a certificate of good standing. And let's see, yes, so like I said, this is basic due diligence. So the enhanced due diligence comes into play when there is more risk or high risk or more sensitive transactions or clients. So you'd see more due diligence done when more things asked for, when you have persons who are high risk from high risk countries such as Iran or Russia, or you may see some persons who are PEPs, as we spoke about numerous times in class, that more due diligence is required for those persons. So customer due diligence is basically just to ensure that the risk reputation of the company is being followed, the banking system is reliable, the reputation of the banking system is preserved, and it's reliable. It complements basically the bank risk strategy, and it's as the more complex the transaction, the more due diligence or the more documentation that is required. So for example, I have how we had just had elections. A lot of those MPs might have been just basic simplified customer due diligence in certain institutions that they may have banked with or done business with. So now that they are members of parliament or may have certain offices that they handle, or ministers, they would now be considered PEPs, and that would all have happened in a week or so span. So now whatever institution they were banking with has to now change them from, and maybe signatories who are like their wives or whomever may be on the accounts of them, may now have to change them from regular due diligence and seek more information, because now the due diligence will become more strategic and more sensitive.
Okay, and that's an excellent example of Deandra. So yeah, so very good. That's an excellent example to use. Okay, go ahead.
And so I think, let me look at the question and then okay. So like I said, basically, the more high risk clients, the institutions now for basic risk, basic customer risk due diligence, we don't see where we necessarily need source of wealth. But for more enhanced due diligence, we now have to go deeper and ask for source of wealth, whether it's from inheritance, whether it's from a certain product or service, because those can now contribute to whether or not the client or the company may be high risk, low risk, or medium risk. So yeah, I didn't want to get too deep because I didn't want to go into risk now talking about due diligence. So that's all I have for now.
Okay,
so I don't know
great.
if that was
That's
on the
great.
right track or I need.
Yeah, it was. I just want to add that from recommendation 10 straight to 24, all of those fall under customer due diligence. So if you just look at, sanctions in there, identification, all the statutory requirements, all of those fall under customer due diligence. What I've seen on the intermediate section is on intro, they ask you about the statutory requirements. On intermediate, they give you a scenario question where there may be some high risk red flags that you have to point out. And then it's almost like an onboarding process. Would you open the account for this person? And if you did, do you do simplified or do you do enhanced? And what controls do you put in place? If it's a PEP, then you say, I let the board sign. If it's a high risk country, but not a PEP, then perhaps a committee or, senior level or some type of control that you have in place. And then you would discuss, I would monitor it annually versus, every 2 or 3 years. And like you said, most recently, I guess at the beginning of the political season, we saw some names that we've never seen before. We then now need to find out, do they have an account with us, and who are their significant others, who are their close relatives? So that's really, you would have to, suppose reviewers would do at December 30th, and you would have just reviewed this person, and at December, he was low risk, and now here it is, he's now the new MP. So now you have to go and do a new review and update him to find out who all the counterparties are and how they should be risk rated. So that's what I said. That was a very good example. So account officers should have been busy at the beginning of the year when they started to announce who the candidates were, and even the ones who are in opposition, all those DNAs, all those coalitions, they have accounts somewhere. So all of them need to now be reviewed and revised. Okay.
I have a question, Ms. Bullard.
Yes, go ahead.
With this number 10,
Mhm.
would the comparison between the customer due diligence and enhanced due diligence bring points? Like I say, like source of wealth, less
Yeah,
work, more wealth. Would that bring points too?
It will, because you will say these are my controls. So
okay.
The question, like I said, scenario question, they say, will you open the account? If you open the account, how will it be risk rated? What controls would you put in place? And under the controls, that's where you would say, well, I previously had source of income, I will now ask for source of wealth.
Okay, good.
And what have you.
Okay.
Any questions or concerns? No? All it is clear as mud. We are prepared.
We're getting there.
Okay. Well,
we have to revamp.
Well, ladies, we have done it, and we're at the end, and this is it, and we've done it. So, congratulations! You're more than 80% there. I am certain that all of you are going to be successful, and like I said, this was a very intellectual class. It was a pleasure to meet and speak with all of you, and I found the discussions provocative and interesting. Each week I look forward to it. And so I'm very pleased, and I have no concerns about this class at all. So I thank you for being receptive to the information and participating. And I hope to see some of you continue on in the journey, and I hope to see some of you in ICA. But if not, nevertheless, in another year or so, please go to your trainings for whatever department or aspect of your career. You always know that you need to keep training, keep current, keep abreast of what's going on. Network, and keep these people in your circle, because you know in a few years Whistling will be the Attorney General or the head of some big company. So we need to get a number now. So she wouldn't be like, Sheena who? I don't know a Sheena, So, lock her down from now so she can't play like she don't know us in a few years.
I am not that kind of person.
She'll be too busy to take our calls in a few years. So lock her down now, okay? All right, but ladies, like I said, it's been a pleasure, and I hope you found the information valuable. I hope you can go into your organizations and apply it, and I wish you all success in the future. And you are all in my network. Y'all don't play like y'all don't know Miss Bullet, because I have all your names and numbers. And when I need help, I will be calling on all of you. Okay? So you take care, and I am here available if you need assistance or questions. You can always reach me by email. Okay?
Okay.
Thanks, Ms.
Okay.
Bullard.
I just have
Thank
one more
you,
question.
Ms.
before you go
Bullard.
forward.
Go ahead, Alicia.
Okay, so for customer due diligence, right, I had 8 things, but it sounds like these things may fall under enhanced due diligence. So I had who is the customer, where is the customer from, the nature of the customer's business, the rationale for the relationship with the company, source of funds, source of wealth, assessment of transactions pattern from the beginning of the relationship, and revision of the customer profile periodically. So you guys were saying source of wealth. Would that be EDD or CDD?
Source of wealth would be EDD. So source of income is for simplified, and source of wealth is for enhanced. And so what you just called off that list is just really a list of identification. That sounds like an account opening package, which you would, so that's one of, remember there are 5 statutory requirements. One is identification, then there's monitoring, then there's record keeping, the Mlr Role. And what's the last one? Training. Okay, so you essentially called off what's required in the identification only.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Alicia, remember, enhanced due diligence too is what you would do in the event a customer is high risk. So that's enhanced due diligence if you want to remember it in that way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and like I say, for the most part, that'd probably be a scenario question. And so you want to identify the red flags, and then you want to list your controls. And so again, yeah, enhanced, if it's a high risk, yeah, enhanced due diligence controls would be, I would get like the board to approve or a committee to approve. I will monitor annually. I will list it as high risk. I will do annual reviews and what have you, stuff like that. So you want to list what controls you would actually carry out. Okay, and then of course, you would know the high-risk countries, the red flags, Afghanistan, you know the high-risk businesses, it'll say correspondent banking or diamond or gas and oil or bearer shares, or PEP. So you would it'll be easily identified, or Russia or Iran, you would see that it's a sanctioned country. So you would be able to identify right off the bat that these are high-risk indicators.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Great. Okay, so if there are no further questions or concern, it's been a pleasure. And like I say, we will network sooner than later. Okay, so
Thanks, Ms. Bullard.
thank you too. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and plan your
Thank you,
celebration
you as well.
right after the exam. Okay.
Ms.
Yeah,
Bullard,
good
don't forget
holiday
to go back to
weekend.
that exam and deal with them risk questions, please. We don't want them.
Yes. Okay. I'll try to make them as clear as possible. So
Clear as
there's
mud.
no confusion.
We don't want them
Okay.
clear as mud, though. We want them clear.
You want them clear. Okay.
Thank
I'll
you.
do that.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Y'all have a good weekend. Take
You too,
care.
Ms.
Have a good
Bullard.
weekend.
Okay.